Democrats are supposed to be the party of personal choice that favors greater personal freedom in social and personal affairs. And at least on these issues, that isn't the case.
Hi, I'm Tracy Oppenheimer for ReasonTV, and we're here with Reason Foundation's polling director, Emily Ekins. Emily, thanks for sitting down with us.
Thanks for having me.
You're here to talk about the latest poll results from December, and one of the big issues that you asked people about was minimum wage. So can you talk about some of your findings? You said they were pretty surprising.
Yes, well, at first we asked the same question that all the other polls are asking and find the same result, that nearly 3/4 of Americans favor raising the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. But what we did that's different than the other polls is we followed it up with a follow-up question asking people if they would favor or oppose raising the minimum wage if it were to cause some employers to lay off employees or hire fewer workers. In that situation, support flips, and a majority oppose raising the minimum wage if it were associated with costs. And so ultimately, that's the question at hand. Will raising the minimum wage actually cost us something, or is it a benefits-only proposition? I think the debate we should be having is about what minimum wage jobs are supposed to be. So we asked Americans what they thought, and nearly 2/3 of Americans view minimum wage jobs as stepping stone jobs for low-skilled workers to gain new skills. They're not supposed to be long-term. They're not supposed to be able to support a family. Only about 1/4 of Americans view minimum wage jobs as those that should support a family, that should be long-term jobs.
You go into asking about specific consumer products and whether the government should be involved in regulations like the DNA testing kit 23andMe, 3D printed guns, electronic cigarettes. Were there any patterns or trends that you noticed?
We found that overwhelmingly, majorities of Americans believe that these types of products should be allowed. So genetic testing kits that tell people about their DNA. A majority think those should be allowed, not banned. A majority think that people should be allowed to smoke e-cigarettes, play violent video games, play online poker. And nearly 3/4 of Americans think people should be allowed to eat trans fats if they want to, and drink caffeinated energy drinks. And these are all consumer goods or activities that the government is trying to regulate. Alternatively, a majority of Americans think that 3D printed guns should be illegal.
So for these issues in particular, did you see any trends in Republicans versus Democrats and nannying behavior?
So we compared responses to these questions between Democrats and Republicans. And on these questions that we asked about, Democrats were actually statistically more likely to favor government prohibiting behaviors than Republicans. Now, alternatively, if we had asked other types of questions like about pornography, about drug use, Republicans would have been more likely to support government intervention. But the reason this is meaningful is that Democrats are supposed to be the party of personal choice that favors greater personal freedom in social and personal affairs. And at least on these issues, that isn't the case.
There's a lot on criminal justice in the poll. Can you talk about what Americans thought about mandatory minimums or anything else particularly relevant?
Yes. The truth is, most Americans don't really know much about mandatory minimums. Many of them probably don't even know what they are. But when we asked people about that, nearly 3/4 of Americans favor eliminating mandatory minimum prison sentences for nonviolent offenders. And instead, they would prefer that judges be able to make sentencing decisions on a case-by-case basis.
What about with broader local law enforcement powers, militarization of police?
We asked people about that. A majority oppose local police departments using drones and armored vehicles. They just don't think it's necessary to protect the public. Only about 37% believe it's necessary to protect the public interest.
Great. Well, Emily, thanks again for sharing that with us.
Thanks for having me.
For the full poll results, go to reason.com/poll. For ReasonTV, I'm Tracy Oppenheimer.